Now, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. So let me explain. First off, it's free. I'm not joking, you guys. The Anchor app, it is free to use. Second, there's creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Now that's awesome, isn't it? Third, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere, you guys, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and so many more platforms. Fourth, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Now, is that awesome, you guys, or what? That's just terrific. And finally, it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So I have another podcast with Anchor, and I'm just loving Anchor so much. I love it. It's so very easy to use, guys. So why don't you download the free Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. What's up, you guys, and welcome to the official podcast of Damian Talks Education. So listen up. I am here to talk about all things education on my podcast. So get prepared for some realness and honesty of education as I walk you down through various of topics that's happening in the education world with some amazing guests, to sharing stories relating to education and so much more, because I got you covered with education. So join me on this journey of education with me. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another live episode of Damian Talks Education. I'm so glad that you are all here joining me on tonight, on this Friday night. Woo woo! Kicking off the weekend with another live episode of Damian Talks Education. So on this episode here, I have another guest joining me. So let me tell you guys all about this amazing guest here, who is a social studies teacher at a public high school in the Bronx area, you guys, who is also a YouTuber and has a channel called Class Disrupted, and so many much more, you guys. So everyone, please welcome on to the podcast Miss Stephanie Edmonds, and I cannot wait to connect with her. We've been trying to connect with each other for so long, and finally we have a chance. So let me bring her on now, you guys. I'm so very excited. And we're connecting.
Hey,
Hey, how
how's it
are
going?
you? I
I'm
am
doing good.
good. I am good. Thank you so much for coming on to my podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited. It's been a while in the making too, huh?
Yes, it has. It has been. I've been trying to connect with you for so long, and finally we have a chance now. So let's get started here with you telling us a little bit about yourself for our audience here, my audience.
All right, for sure. So you had said I'm a teacher. I teach high school in the Bronx, 10th grade global history. So much fun. Shout out to all my social studies teachers out there. And I'm in my fifth year. And I don't know, I had a vision of what I thought I would be doing, but kind of how everything changed and these long-term school closures is kind of really making me rethink my path a little bit. I'm pretty disappointed to see us putting our kids last in this whole situation. You can see I have my schools are essential. I believe teachers are essential workers. I believe school is essential for students. So that has a lot of my focus right now. It kind of has me rethinking a little bit of the moves and the path I want to take. But I am really happy here to be here with you to talk a little bit about, my teacher journey and yeah, just have a good time. It's Friday, right?
Yes, it is. It is Friday, ending off another.
Drinking my water. Got to be hydrated here.
Yes, water is so good for you. So I want to ask you this here, and I want to know what inspired you of wanting to become an educator in the first place. Did it quite run down in your family, or did you have an influence person on your life? I want to know what decided you to go into this profession.
Yeah, so no teachers in my family, not even really in my extended family, I guess we have like some like coaches or instructors, but that's in their field. Like my two cousins are in the Air
Mm-hmm.
Force, and they became Air Force instructors after, but no teachers. So the thing that really got me focused on education and the policies and who has power and feeling like a kid, like you just being moved around, and kind of like the situation where now the kids are being put last and politics are being put first. So when I was in fifth grade, they were doing a whole redistricting in my district, and the idea was to make it more socioeconomically and racially balanced. And in my mind and in all the kids' minds, we're like, oh, we just want to go with all our friends, at the middle
Mm-hmm.
school where all our kids from this neighborhood and this school have gone forever and ever. Um, and basically what happens was they wanted to take my side of town. My side of town is predominantly Hispanic, white working class, and then we have a small amount of black population as well. Um, and so they wanted to take us and use us to like balance out the other side of town, which is wealthier and whiter. And so they ended up taking us, busing us from our side of town, like past two, three other middle schools up to this other middle school. And then of course, when we get there, middle schools when you start groups. And so, you're a little excited about it, but we all got up there and all the kids from my side of town was in like the lower groups, and then the kids from the other side of town, you could tell they were the ones who mostly made up the kids in the higher groups. So of course my mom marched down there and she was like, listen, you're going to move my daughter. But that doesn't really do anything for my friends. And so you just start to see the system play out. And I was the type to definitely come home and be like, I don't like Mr. So and so, or I don't like Mrs. So and so, or like, and I would speak up in class too about it, let teachers know.
Mm-hmm.
um let the AP know, like, listen, you could call my mom, I didn't do anything bad or anything wrong, this is just the way I want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really where everything started. And I didn't go into it right away. I took a couple years, wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but
Right.
then I was like, all right, I need a steady job, a career. So something I'm passionate about, and
Yes.
I've never looked back.
Yes. 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 Here's my next question for you. What's if what's one thing that you wish that could have been different about your career in education if you could go back and you could change something in your profession? What would it be and why?
Or if I could change something in my own personal career, or if I could change something in education, like the field of education generally.
We could do both. We could do both.
Okay, so my own personal career, I mean, of course, there's times where I could look back and say, like, oh, I wish I had done this lesson better, or I wish I hadn't have made this mistake that got me, called into my principal's office.
Mm,
But at the same time, I highly value the lessons that I learned from those things. So I think it's hard for me to say, like there's things in my actual real life outside of education. I'm like, dang, like I didn't need to go through that. But like in terms of my actual job or career, it probably just has to do with maybe like ways that I've talked to people who I care about,
yeah.
or ways that I've expressed myself when I was in those situations, more on a personal level than like in my own thing. Because like, when you get upset or when you get mad, and I definitely have can get hot-headed. It's something that I personally am continuing to work on. I've definitely said things to people who I care about that I shouldn't have said.
Mm.
Though I'm not really the type to talk behind people's back. Like I said these things to people's faces. Which I don't know if it makes it better or worse.
Right. So, um, here's the thing that's been going on in my mind here pretty much lately, and I want all educators to quite chime in onto this. What is your best tip of how we can make this world a safe and better environment for our children to live in? Because right now we have so much going on. We are still in this pandemic. You have some students who don't even have homes, who are homeless, and you have many students who don't trust us because of the things that we do. So how can we make this a safe environment for them to live in, to where they know that we really do care about them so much and that we love them and we would do anything for them. So, what's your tip?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and as you pointed out, is very relevant to what we see going on right now. How I talked about in the beginning, in reopening things, we are putting
Yes.
our children last in the equation, and that's just an extension of really what has been going on in at Class Disruption, what I made my whole channel about. And so I think that the number one thing that we can do is just inject choice into the system. And so that does mean a lot of these kind of institutional designs and rules and red tape and the numbers and the data and the check boxes, a lot of the things that we've come to like know and
Mm-hmm.
think are necessary, accept as necessary, and put children and families behind that. And we've really disconnected the families with the schools. So that does obviously mean fighting against a lot of institutional powers. I'm a union member myself. I consider myself somebody who's very pro-democracy and pro as many voices, especially, it's a teaching, like teachers should have a voice in that. Too
Yes.
often, though, I think that these unions become kind of institutions unto themselves that just exist to keep existing rather than to actually put teachers in a place where they can make education better. And that goes along too with just the 6 hour that goes on. That even leads up to academia with their ways that you have to get certified in this and you have to do that. And they don't really do a great job of teaching you actually how to teach. They do a lot of other, I don't know. Honestly, I can't even tell you what I learned in grad school. Like the experience that has given me the most was when I was a tutor at this reading and math place called Lindenwood Bell Learning Processes. So I would just like to see more choice, and that's not to be confused like specifically with like charter schools or like the school choice movement, but just like even at going into school, like students should have the choice of what classes they take, right?
Yes.
Obviously, there needs to be some limits. There needs to be some structure. I imagine there might be like a core curriculum still, but they shouldn't just be handed a schedule, right? This should be
Right.
a conversation.
Right. I absolutely agree with you with that. I absolutely agree with you on that. It's all about our students. That's what I feel like. It's about us. So that I totally agree with you on that there. Now, what is your school district doing during this pandemic here? Are you guys doing virtual learning, in person? How's that going on with you right now?
Right, so I'm in New York City, which, it's the largest school system in the country by far. The next largest is LA, and it's a little less than half our size. So we're like a million something, and they're like 650K. And then, everything from there is like 300,000. So we're massive. And so we have many districts within us, but that also means we have the most resources at our disposal. Um, even though sometimes we do have some of the most difficult populations, we have lots of great students and lots of resources to serve them. And so New York City, I was really excited at the beginning of the summer, not overly excited, but I was
Yeah.
looking forward to, like, they said, okay, we're going to open up with this hybrid system. We were kind of like leading the way in that. And then they hit this like 3% threshold of community infection rate, which when they
Hmm.
put it in place over the summer, it was hard to know like what exactly the right metrics were, but it became clear by the time we got to fall that it was kind of an arbitrary metric and it should be updated. But did we look at that before it became a pressing issue and closed down the whole school system? Of course not. And now we find ourselves in the position where since a little bit before Thanksgiving around that time, all 6 to 12s have been shut down. I am optimistic about our K to 5 being open. We are having some issues with overburdensome like quarantine measures that if there's like two unlinked cases, they'll shut down a building. Even if it shows there's no spread and it's just like these two people came in, we found them and we got them out. They'll shut down the whole school for that. So that's something that we're fighting, and just getting a date for 6 to 12 to start. Like, I was in there when we did hybrid, and I mean, obviously, I have a limited perspective. I see into my classroom, I see into my school, my building.
Mm-hmm.
I can know a little bit from what I hear from other teachers, but all in all, it seemed to be more or less successful. It gave parents some choice, students some choice. It wasn't the most amazing thing in the world, but right now I'm trying not to be too cynical, I guess. Trying to stay, blessed.
Yes, 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 that's what we all need now. Where do you see, and I'm really thinking about this too because I'm a future educator and I'm wondering how's this going to work out for me. Where do you see the future of education after once this pandemic's all over with? Because we will get through this. So where do you see the future of education after this pandemic's over with? And do you think once it's over with, we will still be using some kind of way virtual learning, distant learning into our classrooms? Do you think?
So I'm going to start off by saying right away, I think virtual is here to stay. Uh, However, not in this way that it is now. I think it'll be kind of like more of a niche market. And this goes back to the whole thing I was talking about, choice, right? There truly are some students who virtual works better for,
Yeah.
or some type of like hybrid thing. But I would say the virtual students, that is a small minority of students, and the vast majority still need to be in person for most of the time. Now, something that I've been saying too, going back several years, is that, high school students don't need to be in school 7 hours a day, shifting from class to class. Like, I think it does make sense to have some type of hybrid thing, whether that's with classes or whether that's with them going out into the community, volunteering, doing an internship, having a job, all those types of things. So I think that it's going to be I think that we're going through a transition period. So it's not going
Mm-hmm.
to be smooth, not going to be smooth for teachers, it's not going to be smooth for students especially. I think there's things that we could do to make it better for our students while we're going through this transition, but unfortunately, to get to that place, it's going to take breaking down a lot of these institutional powers that are trying to like maintain their grip, maintain the status quo. At the same time, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for educators like you and me who are pretty technologically savvy, right?
Yes.
Who are already out on the internet voicing their opinion, gaining notoriety, gaining power with other teachers, like not like, oh, I want power, but just like gaining
Mm-hmm.
influence, I guess. And so we already see it with the rise of like these edu like celebrities, kind of like, however you feel about edu celebrities, but there's plenty out there who just like have their own business. They go from school to school, they support, they do what they do, and I think that's dope. That's way better than Pearson coming into my classroom and telling me what to do. So
Yes.
I think that it's going to be a mix. As with any time of transition, it's going to be turbulent, and it's, some people are going to get unfortunately lost in the cracks, but there's also opportunity, and hopefully we could come back on the other side even better, stronger, and have a better education system for our kids in the future.
I agree. I agree with you on that. Now, since I am a future educator and most of my listeners um, are future educators, what advice would you give to us of wanting to pursue a career in this education here and the right path to go down on? So, what's your advice to all of us?
It's hard. Like when you say like right path, that's hard because everybody kind of has their own teaching style, right?
Exactly.
Everybody's gonna have their own like teacher identity. Some teachers is like me. I'm like super high energy, da 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 da. But I have a teacher friend who's like way more mellow, but the kids love him because he keeps it so real with them. So
Yes.
it's all about finding your who you are, and that's going to take making mistakes. That's going to take making a fool out of yourself, being somebody who you're totally not, messing up, falling flat on your face and getting back up a couple times. um, and then the next part to that is have fun with it. I see even my veteran teachers, everybody just like is like, obviously you need to take it seriously. I take what I do super seriously, but
Mm-hmm.
not seriously to the point where you're like, oh, they want me to do this and they want me to do that, and I don't. Like, have fun with what you do, and
Mm-hmm.
love it, and take those risks. take those little gaps of opportunity. Like, okay, your admin is like pretty clear, like this is the thing that they want you to do over here, but so do that thing. But that still leaves this space over here for you to kind of like do your own little thing, experiment and own it, and communicate with your admin and your principal too. Or sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just gotta do it and then let them know after what it is. But have fun with it. Too often I just see teachers stressing out all the time about this and about that, and also, if you can't grade it, don't assign it. That's
Mm.
another thing. Teachers always, like I try not to. If I can't realistically grade something, then I'm not gonna assign it, or I'm gonna change the criteria of the assignment or something. Like, don't just give work because you're like, oh, I'm supposed to have work to give. You know.
Yes.
So there's
Yes.
a few things in there, but mostly have fun with it.
Well, thank
Stay
you.
foolish.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, because I'm the type of that likes a teacher like you who's, full of energy and stuff. And I cannot stand, and I'm sorry, and I told one of my friends this, but back in my senior year, I had a teacher who was just, I mean, I love this teacher, I really did. But this was her last year, and she was just like quite like chilled back, quite like boring. And I wasn't like really feeling, I'm sorry I have to say that, but I wasn't like really feeling that class because it was just all boring. And she was just not like, I like a person who's
I need
energetic.
more days until I get. I had teachers like that.
I just that's the type of person that I am, full of energy, realness, telling stories, and I cannot wait to start my journey as a teacher. I cannot wait so my students can see the real me. And lots of teachers they don't quite show the real of themselves. Am I right? Because they only show like parts of themselves, not telling the full story of to their students.
No, yeah, and I mean it definitely is a balance, but I don't like kind of like the super strict boundaries that a lot of teachers have. I played a lot of sports growing up, so I like that like coach kind of vibe. Like you get super close with your coaches, but at the same time, like they could be intense, they could be hardcore with you. They know where the line is. So I like to kind of pull on those like coachy vibes. And I think I'm just super excited for you too. I love like how you're out here, you're in the community, you're putting yourself out there on the internet, like, that's so getting up in front of a class, you're going to be so far ahead of a lot of other teachers who are coming in kind of just like bright-eyed and like never been in it before. So I love it. And if there's anything that you need help with, like if you need any hours or something to like sit in on class, or like you want to team up and like be a guest teacher in my class or something, like hit me up. And I think that would be pretty sweet.
Yes, absolutely. I will great. I would really love that to be a guest. Can I do that? Really be a guest teacher?
I mean, like I do, like that's pretty kind of normal thing that I do. Like I've been kind of off. Like I had a couple guest teachers at the beginning of the year, and I'm about to start it up again. We start our new semester the beginning of February, so I was gonna have a guest teacher on like one of my first days. And like yeah, I just bring usually it's people from in my local community, but now we're virtual. So and I did have a teacher actually from the UK link in
Oh,
and do like a writing thing with me. So I mean, at least for me, again, that's one of those things that I just told my principal. I'm like, hey, like, I want to do this guest teacher thing. This is my vision. And he was just like, yeah, do it. And now that we're online, it's like even easier because I don't have to make arrangements for them to come to the building and whatever, this and that. I can just throw them the link and they'll come through.
all right. Well, I would love to be a guest teacher for your students in your classroom.
All right, cool. So what subject are you? What are you,
I
what's
I
you're in?
I love math.
Okay,
Oof,
good math. All
yes.
right, I'm social studies, but I'm sure we're about to do like Industrial Revolution. And I was gonna have them maybe do like something with making a business or doing so. Maybe we could like team up on like the money side of things with that.
Okay. Yes, I love that. Love that.
All right, awesome, Damian. Thank you so much, and I'm super excited about that. We're gonna talk in the next few weeks, okay?
Yes. All right. I cannot wait. So let's move on to I still can't believe this happened on January the 6th at the Capitol. That should not have happened at all.
Yeah.
So when that had happened, did you open up the conversation to your students talking about it and how did it went?
Yeah, so as a social studies teacher, I feel a particular responsibility to make sure that we're keeping in tune with current events. And especially this year, I've been, I made my whole, I'm global history. And so when we did the Enlightenment, where it's all talking about, the ideas of separations of power, we were looking at the election and we were talking about the American system of government. And so, yeah, when, updates on the election and everything that's going on. So when the Capitol happened, of course, the next day, that's what we started off class with. And we're doing the French Revolution, so I can't say it was a really tricky thing to even make connections with to what we were doing. It actually lended itself quite well to our lesson that day in an unfortunate way. But yeah, like I'm always trying to open up space and just create that way where kids feel like they can say what they want. And I
Yes.
try to make it so kids who have any opinion can feel safe in that space. And I'm always trying to, like today, for example, we were talking about I was showing them how to look up articles for their project that they're doing. And so I gave them an example and I was like, listen, I didn't just look at one article. I got 3 articles. I have one that's from like a more left news outlet. I have one from the middle, and I have one from more right outlet. So I can kind of get that different perspective and see, okay, what's the narrative? What's the fact? So that's just my goal as a social studies teacher, is really to um, leave my own bias out of it and present
Hmm.
the best arguments for my kids. So they're with, okay, this is what I think, but actually to make my argument the best I can, I should know what the other side is saying. So,
Correct.
and I had in my class, and this goes back to even when I was teaching my first year, when it was the elections for Trump the first time. Like I always had like a couple Trump supporters, and that's how it was this year too. So I always try to make that space where I had kids who can support Trump, kids who can support Biden, kids who just like really, they're like, I'm not that into it, can also feel like they have a space.
Yes, and I want to touch on this here. Racism still exists in America today. Some people think that it's over with, but it's not. So, what conversations um, are you even having conversations about race in your classroom, and how are you opening it up with your students?
I mean, oh yeah, 100%, because that goes right along with current events, right?
Hmm.
The with Black Lives Matter breaking out into the protests that came into this school year. So we were talking about the end of last school year, and then this school year, what I did was I took a piece from the 1619 Project from the New York Times, and then I took a piece from the 1776 Project, which is kind of like a competing narrative with that. So they came out with it at the beginning of this school year. If you're familiar with Woodson, Robert Woodson, who was like a civil rights activist, and he has the Woodson Foundation, and he goes into communities and helps give them the tools to like come out of poverty. And so I took a piece from each of these. The 1619, what's going on, Abila, how you doing? Um, and I took a piece from the 1776 Project, and they read both of them. We talked about the different narratives, and interestingly, my students, they found value in both of them. They would, when I asked them, I would say, which narrative do you more identify with? They would say, like, I really like this idea that I can help myself and my family get out of poverty and have a better opportunity. But at the same time, I think that the story of Black people and Black history also is undervalued, and that these stories are important. And honestly, that's what I would want for them to take out of that, is I, and I mean, this is my own personal bias, but I try to
Mm-hmm.
keep that out of the classroom and let them make their own choice. I think that both narratives have a very valuable thing for us, and ultimately I had them write their own personal narrative. So just like how Nicole Hannah Jones, that's her like narrative, and then the one was a biography on Woodson. So I had them write. They could either write their own personal narrative or do like somebody else's life and tell that story.
Yes, yes. Now, Black History Month is coming up next month, and I wonder how is that going to go around this year. And earlier today, I was having a conversation about Black history of it's not being taught to our Black students because when I pretty much start learning, well, quite really digging down into like right now I'm in college. I didn't learn anything about it throughout my high school or school careers until now. And why do you think Black history is not being taught to our Black students now?
So I think that might vary based on what state you're in and depending on like, because I know, for example, in Texas, like their curriculum is super strict. They do the
Mm-hmm.
textbook and they follow along what it says. And of course, just along with it being a textbook, which we all know they're watered down and
Yes.
very, Texas has their own special issues over there. So I don't know what the curriculum is like where you are. I know personally I grew up outside New York City in a suburb like in Connecticut. It's a small city, very um diverse, like I told you, the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
that we were going through. And so personally, I mean, also like I'm a white person, so there's that. I do feel like we got pretty good history on a lot of these issues in our curriculum. Of course, I think our curriculum is a little bit Eurocentric. Like I'm not saying it's the best. And personally, I'm trying to do even more because my students are all black and brown, heavily Dominican especially. So I try to bring in that history in particular. Um, so I think it varies from state to state, and when it just has to do with like representation, what you know, what you're used to. So I think as we become more aware and as we're having more conversations like this, as populations become more diversified and integrated, that we're going to see that transition. And that's obviously a good thing.
Yes. Yes,
So,
I
I mean, in
agree.
terms of Black history, like I said, like I try to always have different issues coming in, including Black history. I guess in February, of course, special month to take extra focus on it, but it's by no means the only time, especially in my class, that we talk about these issues.
Right. Right. Now, here's what I want to ask you here, right before we talk about your YouTube channel here. Um, on Wednesday was a great day for America. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are in the White House, and I want to see what will Dr. Jill Biden, our First Lady, what kind of work she will do in our education system because she is an educator herself. So what do you think once well she's already in, what kind of a work will she make on the impact of education, do you think?
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not very optimistic based on the meeting that she had yesterday with Randy Weingarten and the woman who's the president of the Philly Teachers Union. I forget her name. I don't know if you saw those pictures and like recaps of their conversation, but I think unfortunately the way that the AFT and um, whatever the other national teachers union is, EAU or NEA, they're so like embedded into the establishment kind of like elite Democratic Party that I don't know. I mean, I'm hopeful, like I would be always of any president who's coming in. I'm hopeful and I want to give them a chance and an opportunity. But
Right.
just based on that conversation that they had where they're like, we're going to try to get K to 2 open. It's like, K to 2? Like K-2 is open. What are you talking about? You know, like those should be open now. You don't need to do anything special. Like my son has been going to pre-K, he's 4 years old, all year, no mass, and they've been fine. So to me, it's just disappointing in the whole like, oh, 100 days to open schools. Like again, 100 days puts us in May, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like schools are ending in May. Um,
Right.
and so you know, again, like I want to be optimistic, but just that tight relationship I see between these like old established powers, like the status quo, it makes me, you know, say, okay, let's wait and see.
Yes, yes, let's wait and see. Now, I want to talk about your YouTube channel, Class Disrupted, where you create content aimed at breaking the status quo to finally enact the reforms we need in public education. So tell us all about and
Yes.
how did this came about?
So class disruption is is kind of mean has like a double meaning.
Okay.
It has the meaning of like we have to get away from this kind of compliance oriented education, right? Where it's like the kid in the back lashes out and you like get out, you know,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. And we should be embracing that kid. If that kid is acting out, that probably means we're not meeting their needs in some way. And it probably has to do with the fact that you have them sitting down writing notes the whole period and you're boring as, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as ever. So and like that was the kind of student I was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, like I was a good student. I would do the work and I would like get generally good grades. Like I wasn't the smartest, like I wasn't getting top scores or whatever,
Yeah.
but I did good in school and it wasn't that hard for me. So I was that kid who would always ask the question that you didn't want to get. Or I'd be the kid who would point out the dumb stuff that we do instead of doing the fun stuff. Um, and I would see my friends get kicked out who, you know, they were acting like an a-hole, you know, at the time,
Yeah.
but at the same time I knew they were smart. I just knew class was boring and they weren't about that life. So I felt like we need to embrace those students and we need to make spaces that um, support their, you know, more hands-on kind of learning style. So that's number one. And then number two would just be as a teacher that I want to be able to say what I think. I think, you know, too often you just sitting in a staff meeting like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Or like you know everybody's thinking the same thing as you. Like I'll give
Right.
you an example. This year, my principal wanted us all to get Google certified.
Okay.
And it's like 13 hours of like going through this thing, and then you have to take like a 2 hour test that's timed, and they like watch you or whatever. And I was just like, whatever, I'll just do it. And I wasn't going to do like the 13-hour course. I was just like, whatever, one Sunday I'll just do it and
Yeah.
whatever, hopefully I'll pass. But of course, like all the other teachers are like, oh my God, all these things. And so, like, my principal brought it up one time at one of our staff meetings. And then finally I was just like, what's the point? Like, I can do Google. Like, do I need Google to tell me I can do Google?
Hmm.
Like, you know, like I could understand if there was really a teacher who needed that, but why do I need that? And then everybody in the comments was just like, yeah, like I agree, you know? So I want to be able to say how I feel as a teacher. And then YouTube is just because like I'm a pretty big YouTube head myself. I haven't had a cable. I guess back when I was with my ex, he liked cable, so that was like what 5 years ago now. This is the last time I had cable. I guess when I go to my parents' house. But I'm just a big YouTube person, and I kept being like, "Yo, I could do this. Like, I could do YouTube. Like, I could make videos." And so one
Yes.
day over the summer, a year and a half ago, I was just like, I'm gonna make a YouTube channel. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna put up or shut up, you know?
Yes, and I love your channel so much. So I love all the great contents that you be putting out there. So I want to thank you for coming on to my podcast here. What a great discussion that we had. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on.
Yeah, Damian, thank you for having me. And I'm super excited that, you know, we have teachers like you coming up the pipeline. So let's stay in contact. Let's make that guest teacher thing happen. And
Yes,
hopefully you don't have too much schoolwork over the weekend. I know weekends I cut. I'm
yes,
open schools. That's what I work on the weekends now. So let's get
yes.
these schools open so you can get in there with these kids. When do you graduate?
I will graduate in a couple more years from now.
Okay, so you still got some time. So you just feeling out the landscape. All right, well we
Yes.
keeping the seat warm for you.
Yes, yes, keep that warm for me until I get there. And I really cannot wait. I really cannot believe that I am a college student now. Like in a few more years, I'm really about to be a teacher. And right now, I'm getting like nervous about it. To be honest, I'm so ready. I'm so very passionate about education and I love students so much. And I cannot wait for this journey to begin for me.
Me either. It's happening right now. All right?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. And I will connect with you very soon.
Definitely. Let's do it.
Yes.